This is my latest record find from our local public radio used record sale that was held the end of June. Most of the albums I'll be showing you were $1 each, which is half price of what it was last year. Playing in the background is Ronnie Aldrich's My Cherie Amour, which is on the Destination Love LP from, this happens to be a Decca label rather than the normal London label. Also, there was a stamp on the record label that this record was imported from Italy. The next record is This Is the Girl That Is. Nancy Ames was a very talented singer and also guitarist, and she appeared on a show from around 1963-64 called This Was the Week That Was. And so they kind of twisted the name a little bit and applied it to this album. The next album is Broadway's Fair, Julie Andrews. This one happens to be a replacement I found in stereo. My other copy I have is in mono, so I wanted to finally get a stereo copy. Dance Break by Luis Alcaraz and his orchestra. I'm not familiar with this artist. Most of the songs on here are Hispanic songs and in the Latin tempo. I haven't played it yet, but I imagine they sound like good titles. Next is Harry Belafonte's Jump Up Calypso and other West Indian folk songs. I happen to be a Harry Belafonte fan, so I couldn't resist Belafonte Sings of the Caribbean. This has his hit record Coconut Woman, a record I first heard in 1959, and I have it on 45, which definitely shows it has been played a lot. Next is another singer I really liked from around 1958-59, was Polly Bergen, Four Seasons of Love. She originally appeared on Gary Moore's To Tell the Truth show, and that's when I first saw her and kind of fell in love with her and her singing. Next is another Polly Bergen. This one is All Alone by the Telephone, and on the back they used little telephone symbols as bullets for each of the song titles. Next is Thank Heaven for Maurice Chevalier. I'm not sure if these are newly recorded or not. In fact, let me check the back here. No, these would be his recordings that were from 1930 to 1935. Next is Showtime Doris Day. I also happen to be a Doris Day fan. Closer Than a Kiss, Vic Damone and his orchestra under the direction of Frank Duvall. I'm a Martin Denny fan, and I can never pass up a Martin Denny album, especially one that the record is in mint condition. This one happens to be Hypnotique, and in stereo. A lot of these I've been finding lately in the Sacramento area have been mono. Next is So Rare by Jimmy Dorsey. This record originally started out on the Fraternity label, and when Fraternity went out of business, Dot Records picked up the masters and issued this album. Then after Dot, a record label by the name of, I believe it is Star Day, picked up the masters also, and now it's also issued on CD by Varis Sarabande. So I kind of wanted to go back and get the as close to the original masters as I could get. Next is an album that I like by Duke Ellington. It's kind of more in a symphonic mood. New World A-Comin', Harlem, The Golden Broom, and The Green Apple. And I looked out on this record, and if it should be in here, it also came with a 7-inch LP that has commentary on his music that was narrated by Duke Ellington. So usually when I found this album in the past, the record has been missing, and luckily both are in mint condition. I've been trying to find this album actually since the early 60s when I was a teenager. I really love pipe organ music, and I finally found a copy of this. Unfortunately, it's not the stereo copy, but it'll enter into the collection, and I call it a place marker. As soon as I can get a mint copy in stereo, this one will be pulled out of the collection and given back to the radio sale. Also, a album I've been looking for a long time in the original mono, A Star Is Born by Judy Garland. Most of the copies that I have seen were in Columbia's electronically enhanced stereo, and I really try to avoid those stereo enhanced albums as much as I can. Next is Getz Gilberto, which includes the hit song The Girl from Ipanema. This album dates from around 1963-64. Next up is Benny Goodman. I'm a devoted Benny Goodman fan, and I try to collect all the albums that he has. I also have this on a CD, but I kind of wanted to go back and get the original mono version and see how that sounds compared to the remastering that was done on CD. Next is Gogi Grant's Love Is the Season. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. Love Is the Season by Eydie Gormé. This one's on ABC Paramount. Again, I'm also an Eydie Gormé fan. I kind of like all of these female singers from the early 60s and also the late 50s. Next is Latin in the Horn by Al Hirt. This is a favorite album of mine. This was a stereo copy that is replacing a mono copy that I have. This one I remember listening to in the late 60s when I was in the Air Force. One of the people that ran the mess hall where we ate liked this record so much he played it every other day, and it kind of grew on me. So I went out and bought a copy of it in mono and finally have a stereo copy of it. Next is Gordon Jenkins' Manhattan Tower. This would be a remake of one that he did on Decca in the early 50s. Next is A Touch of Blue by Jonah Jones and his quartet with the Swingin'est Chorale. I just couldn't pass this one up, Guy Lombardo and Hi-Fi. I know a lot of people think his music is, we'll use an old word, square, but I've liked his music since I was a teenager. So I found this LP. I do have it in a 4-part extended play set on Capitol. So I finally wanted to get the LP version of it. Next is another old-timer from the 30s, Nick Lucas, Painting the Clouds with Sunshine. It also includes Tiptoe Through the Tulips with Me, which was the song that Tiny Tim resurrected in the late 1960s. Next we have Meet the Five Pennies with Red Nichols. This album looks like from the matrix, from the record number, that it was done in the early 1960s. Finally, I've got a copy of all Perez Prado's hits in stereo on this LP. I do have some of these on 45, and the 45s, when they were made, were mono, of course, and I didn't realize that they also had stereo copies that they made at the same time. Next we have Edith Piaf's Adieu on Philips. I'm not sure exactly what year this was done. It almost looks like it was done about the same time the Singing Nuns Dominique album was done, which would probably put it in about the in the early 60s. another Piaf album called Piaf Tonight. This one was issued in this country on the Angel label. Usually most of her records were issued on the Capitol label, but I have no idea why this went over to Angel. Next is an artist I have on some records. I apologize if it's getting kind of dark in here. It's 105 outside and we have clouds in the sky. So we're going to be going through this light and dark period. This is Love in Three Languages by Katiana Ranieri. She started out as a opera singer, and then she switched over to popular Italian songs. I have her on another album on Capital of the World, where it was recorded in Mexico, which was the country she immigrated to in the early 1960s. Next I have here Django Reinhardt and Stéphane Grappelli, Quintet of the Hot Club of France. This was on a very short-lived series on Angel called Great Jazz Recordings of the Century. And looks like these recording dates were probably from the late 30s, early 40s. There's not really much information here on recording dates. Actually, there is. I just happened to notice at the top. These were historic jazz performances which were recorded in Paris on April 21st, 22nd, and 26th of 1937. Unfortunately, it says here also, and I didn't see this when I bought it, the original monophonic recordings were transferred from 78 RPM discs and have been electronically enhanced for today's stereo phonographs. Well, you can't have everything sometimes. And it looks like they, when this record was produced, it was in 1974, and by that time they didn't also issue a mono version of this, like some record companies did in the 60s. Next is Amundo Ros, Dancing with Ros. Again, most of these are Latin American favorites. And Samba, Rumba, Paso Doble, and the Cha-Cha. Next is Artie Shaw. These would be all of his Brunswick recordings from around 1937. Then there's Artie Shaw on Gramercy 5, which would be his post-World War II band, probably somewhere in the year 1944-45. I'm a Shearing fan, and I came across a whole bunch of MGM records. This one's called A Shearing Caravan. Touch of Genius, the George Shearing Quintet. You're hearing George Shearing. Most of these recordings in these three albums dated from the early 1950s and late 40s. These would have been issued probably on the MGM 78s, 45s, and EPs. So MGM took advantage of Shearing's popularity in the mid-50s, and they put together a 12-inch album of all of his earlier works. The Best of George Shearing on Capital Star Day. George Shearing, That Fresh Feeling. I also love Keely Smith, especially records of Keely Smith and Louis Prima. This one happens to be her doing solo on the Dot label. These would have been done after her Capitol recordings. Another album, Be My Love. And we're going to break here, and I'm going to, on the next video, we're going to move over to the 10-inch LPs and some remaining 12-inch, and also records that I have bought at local record stores in the San Francisco Bay Area.